What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with a look at the 10-game Week 14 NFL DFS slate here on DraftKings and FanDuel. We have some interesting things this week that have taken place here at the end of the practice week. A lot of injuries at the running back position are actually going to make this a fairly interesting slate for both low and high risk contests because we have a lot of value plays at the position that we can consider. First, though, as always, I do like to go over my favorite play on this slate. And this week, it's going to be Philadelphia's Saquon Barkley at running back. Going to be the most expensive player on both DraftKings and FanDuel this week, but he is facing the second worst rush defense in the league in the Carolina Panthers. And if the Eagles are interested in giving Saquon a shot at setting the single season rushing record in the National Football League, this is a week to give him the rock over and over again and allow him to really put up some big numbers against the Carolina Panthers. So with that in mind, with Philadelphia favored by 13.5 points here at home against Carolina, this is a really easy spot, I think, to go all in on Saquon in both low and high risk contests this week. And that is why he is my favorite play for Week 14 NFL DFS on DraftKings and FanDuel. He fits my normal agenda of the show where we talk about running backs in positive game script situations based off of spreads and betting markets, with Philadelphia being the biggest favorite on this slate. The second biggest favorite on this slate is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are favored by 7 points at home against the Cleveland Browns, and that means we should be interested in Najee Harris for a high-risk contest this week. Najee's not projecting to be super popular this week, but he is relatively affordable and will definitely go lower owned compared to some of the value plays that we have to discuss here in a little bit. The Browns slightly below average defending the rush and below average defending running backs in the passing game. Just have to worry about Jalen Warren's contributions there in the backfield with Najee week in and week out. Speaking of another running back that is in a little bit of a committee situation, big game last week, we have Tampa Bay's Bucky Irving. The Buccaneers are favored by 6.5 points at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders are below average defending the rush and the third worst defense defending running backs in the passing game. The only issue with Bucky Irving is he is questionable with a hip injury for Sunday, and the Bucs might decide just to rest him up for Week 15 and the stretch run for a playoff spot with a pretty easy matchup for the Bucs here against the Raiders. They should be able to win this game with Rachaad White, even with Sean Tucker as capable backups to Bucky Irving. But if Irving is active at just $6,600 here on DraftKings and a very affordable price over on FanDuel, I do think that Bucky Irving becomes a great high-risk play on this slate. Before some of the injuries opened up, I thought it would be a good low-risk play on this slate. Alas, we move on. Miami favored by 6 points against the New York Jets at home down on South Beach this week. Great opportunity to play Devin Achane in high-risk contests. We see that the rushing numbers haven't really been there, but the target volume still is. And most importantly on that front, the Jets are the worst defense defending running backs in the passing game in the NFL this season. That's great news for Tua Tagovailoa's favorite target, not named Jonnu Smith in this offense. So Devin Achane with a great matchup and a great chance to succeed in a positive game script situation. And then finally, another 6-point home favorite, Aaron Jones against the Atlanta Falcons at home here. Falcons are slightly below average against the rush, but above average defending running backs in the passing game. Jones coming off of a bit of a dud game against the Arizona Cardinals last week. Another good high-risk play. A lot of running backs we discussed already. There are a few more. This is where ownership is going to be now on this slate, guys. Alvin Kamara actually is going to be a little bit more popular than my favorite play, Saquon Barkley, and that's just because he's a little bit cheaper on both DraftKings and FanDuel. See, he's $1,000 less here on DraftKings at $8,000, and he is $9,200 over on FanDuel, so about $800 cheaper than Saquon over there, where Saquon is $10,000. Unfortunately, Taysom Hill suffered a knee injury in last weekend's game. That means he's out for the rest of the season. That does kind of benefit Kamara here because he doesn't have to worry about Taysom taking away high-value touches near the end zone as far as rushing touchdowns or gadget plays are concerned in this Saints offense. We have Kamara projected for one of the highest weighted opportunity touch volume projections we've ever had in the Occupy Fantasy model this week, and that makes Kamara a pretty strong play in both low and high-risk contests. Before these value plays that I'm about to discuss opened up this week, I really did think this slate was all about jamming Barkley and Kamara together in lineups, and there might be an argument still for doing that to some degree here in high-risk contests, given how great the volume projection here is for Kamara as a favorite on the road against the New York Giants. And obviously Saquon is Saquon, right, guys? So Saquon and Kamara are two of my favorite plays at the position. Thought we were going to have to jam them this week, but we don't necessarily have to do that anymore because of these three other plays that are now available to us. The first, and I think by far the best value play here, Isaac Guerendo with the San Francisco 49ers. Christian McCaffrey back on injured reserve, out for the year with a PCL injury. Jordan Mason out this week with an injury that is likely to land him on injured reserve as well. We have seen Kyle Shanahan prove it to us again and again, guys, that he trusts the next man up to handle bell cow volume at the running back position in this very run-heavy 49ers offense. And we've seen Guerrero already have a little bit of extended work this season. You see he had a big game against the Dallas Cowboys in Week 8, handled 14 carries for 85 yards, also handled 10 carries for 99 yards against Seattle back in Week 6. So I would expect Guerrero to see basically go back to the beginning of the season and look at the usage that Jordan Mason had with Christian McCaffrey out. I think that's now Isaac Guerrendo's job here. Isaac Guerrero, if you were able to claim him in waivers, it's definitely going to be a big play for you in season-long playoffs. Best Ball Bros, if you drafted Guerrero late, like I did a couple of times, this might be a play that could help you get to the promised land this winter for sure. But on this slate at 5,400, San Francisco favored at home against the Bears, who are the third worst rush defense in the league. Also pretty poor defending running backs in the passing game. Guerrero in a really, really good spot to succeed. And Guerrero's also only $5,200 over on FanDuel. So really, really easy to get him over there as well. We are expecting, even though it is not confirmed, that Kenneth Walker, just questionable, is unlikely to play this Sunday. Head coach Mike McDonald basically said that he's not sure that he's going to be available. That means that if he misses, Zach Charbonnet will have an opportunity to lead the backfield here for the Seahawks on the road against the Cardinals here. Cardinals are actually an above-average rush defense, so this is a tougher matchup for Zach Charbonnet. We saw in weeks 2 and 3 Charbonnet handle the lion's share of the touches in this backfield, and he gave us 18 and 20, almost 26 PPR points here on DraftKings respectively with his starts. He's just $4,800. He's the cheapest value here because this was kind of late-breaking news we weren't expecting. So Charbonnet actually a pretty good play, I think, for high-risk contests, more so than low-risk. But if we get confirmation that he's definitely starting over the next 24 hours or so, that might change for projected ownership. So keep an eye on the Occupy model for that here on both DraftKings and FanDuel. We've upgraded Charbonnet to a low-risk play in anticipation of that happening, but we don't actually have final confirmation on that, to be clear. Braylon Allen. Back up to Breece Hall for the New York Jets on the road here. Breece Hall, doubtful, did not practice on Friday, not expected to play on Sunday as a result. Doubtful basically means 99% out. Braylon Allen, Best Ball Bros are familiar with this play as well, has not had a start just yet, but early in the season was splitting some work with Breece Hall nearly evenly in the early weeks of the season. Has been super efficient at times in this Jets offense. Has a good matchup. The Dolphins are a below average rush defense this season and league average defending running backs in the passing game. The only thing I would be mindful of here with Braylon Allen is keep an eye on Isaiah Davis in this Jets backfield because I do think the Jets are kind of interested in seeing what this guy has as well. And we might be looking at an RB1A, 1B situation. So it's not a full lock to me, in my eyes, that Braylon Allen gets all the work here, but he is the next man up behind Breece Hall, and he will be pretty popular on this slate as well. It's a lot of running back plays that are available. In low risk, again, I kind of started the week preferring this trio here, Barkley, Kamara, and Guerrero on both DraftKings and FanDuel, but I think it is okay to come off of one of these expensive guys. I do prefer Barkley because I think he has a higher ceiling here, and playing one of these values like Braylon Allen, and now we have way more remaining salary here to do pretty much anything we want with either a low risk or a high risk lineup. So keep that in mind here as we go through the rest of the plays. Popular wide receivers this week. Juwan Jennings with the 49ers, inexplicably $5,200 here, despite having tremendous target volume over the last few weeks. He's going to be the most popular value in his salary range here on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Jacoby Myers is also going to be played pretty heavily by the field here. You see a questionable tag here, but he is expected to play by the coaching staff here. So this is just kind of an administrative reporting of a potential injury. Myers fully expected to suit up at 5,600. And then there is a lot of other receivers that are pretty high in ownership in our model that everyone's going to be looking towards here. We have Drake London with the Falcons at 6,400. He'll be pretty popular on this slate. We have Jerry Jeudy. We saw him have a big game on Monday Night Football against Denver. He'll also be in the low-risk pool this week at just 5,700 here on DraftKings. Tampa Bay's Mike Evans, also an option for one of our low-risk plays. We have Calvin Ridley with the Tennessee Titans that is also catching a ton of ownership in this matchup with Jacksonville at 5,700. Hopefully some of that NWI touchdown volume goes back his way. And then I do think we have the ability to even come all the way down to somebody like David Moore with Carolina for some salary savings of $4,000. So what you do with your final receiver spot is going to depend on how you attack tight end and quarterback on this slate. For defense, the Saints are your low risk play against the Giants this week. That's who everyone is in on. But your other popular plays this week, also relatively cheap. Tennessee at home against Jacksonville here. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, favored by a touchdown against the Browns, are going to be fairly popular on both DraftKings and FanDuel as well. Quarterback. If you need a value play, Will Levis is your guy. That's who the field is going to be looking for here on DraftKings and FanDuel at just $5,000 here on DraftKings, $6,600 over on FanDuel. And we do have Sam Darnold that is also going to be fairly popular this week on DraftKings and FanDuel. Darnold's going to be actually the most popular play on FanDuel at the quarterback position, 6,100 here on DraftKings. I do think once we get up to that kind of low $6,000 range, I just prefer playing Kyler Murray with his rushing upside that is available to us. That seems like a better play to me than Sam Darnold. But just to flesh out what you can do with the cheapest popular quarterback imaginable here, Levis, good matchup here against Jacksonville this week. We have $5,950 per player remaining. I do think the field, thanks to the value play at running back, is not going to get cute here. They're going to look at getting up to Brock Bowers, the number one tight end in the NFL, if possible. We had 5,400 for a final receiver spot here. That's a little bit lower than I personally like it. So I do think you can massage this a little bit. You could come off Saints. No. I think behind Bowers, you have Trey McBride with Arizona at 6,100. And that gets us up to like a Calvin Ridley for our final receiver or a Jerry Jeudy. I think that's probably a little bit more palatable on this slate for low risk. So that's probably where I will be. But you also have access to David Njoku with Cleveland, who has seen really, really good target volume. Cedric Tillman expected to be out again. So Jeudy, Njoku, and Elijah Moore are going to be the majority of the targeted pass catchers for Jameis Winston in this game. But your ultimate cheap-ish play, relatively speaking here, TJ Hawkinson with the Vikings is going to be very popular this week as well. You get him in here. You got 7,600. You can play basically anyone you want other than these big three guys here. And I think that's probably a great place to be this week in low-risk contests. Now, for high-risk contests, I love the Buffalo and the LA Rams game this week. And with these cheap running backs, you can pretty much do anything you want with game stacks now. So that's certainly something else to be aware of. Buffalo, we get Josh Allen. We're expecting Dawson Knox to start at tight end, and that definitely makes it pretty easy to double stack Josh Allen with his number one receiver in Khalil Shakir. And 42.66 per player remaining. Obviously, we play our defense. That's going to bring that up a little bit. It's going to be pretty hard to play Nakua in this stack, just 2,200. Literally cannot do that. So this might be where you come off of the running backs and go for some of the value plays here. And now you can do whatever you want with that final wide receiver spot in high-risk contests. But that's probably purely to accommodate playing Josh Allen, probably purely to accommodate playing Jalen Hurts as well on the Philadelphia side. If you want to get different with Philadelphia and be off Saquon Barkley, you could go for some of the Hurts tush pushes. You could go for a big game from the receivers here. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, who's going to be back. You get them in here, 60-50 per player remaining. Do not have to use bringbacks with Philadelphia favored by 2 touchdowns. But with David Moore being an underperforming wide receiver, with Philadelphia being down 2 safeties this week, and with Moore still being a really affordable $4,000 here on DraftKings, $5,300 over on FanDuel, I do think there's some merit to playing him on his own. Somewhat of a trifecta play situation going on here with Carolina Panthers receivers, like Brian talked about on Thursday night's Showdown video. That is going on with David Moore here specifically with Carolina. Low price, low ownership, underperforming wide receiver, defensive injuries. David Moore could be a decent bringback for some 2-1s here with Philadelphia. 8,100 for a final receiver. Definitely don't mind doing that here. Massage that a little bit because I don't think Dawson Knox makes sense in this type of stack, but you get the idea here. Philadelphia stacks in play. I love San Francisco stacks as well. Garendo already going to be fairly popular. We can get to Purdy on top of Garendo and Juwan Jennings. These two plays already going to be fairly popular this week. On the Chicago side, we have an underperforming wide receiver, Rome Odunze, with the Bears, that we could also use as a bringback for a 3-1, 67-66 per player remaining. Think we can get to Saquon here, who again, my favorite play on this slate, and 56.50. That's definitely enough to get things done here. On DraftKings, over on FanDuel, same thing here. I have Purdy, I have Jennings, I have Garendo. I went with Hawkinson here. I went with the Titans defense. We can get Odunze in here, 5,300 remaining, and there's a player here on the screen that I already talked about a little bit ago that fits to make this work here. So that's kind of my favorite way to attack this slate, and I think that's pretty much how I'm going to be building my lineups here in week number 14 in NFL DFS. Other underperforming wide receivers before we get out of here. Number one underperforming wide receiver in our model this week is Drake London with the Atlanta Falcons. A lot of opportunity the last few weeks. No touchdowns in the last 3 games for the Falcons. That's usually the biggest way someone ends up underperforming. A lot of targets, a lot of air yards, no scores. We have Brian Thomas with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Still technically an underperforming wide receiver, even though we got a touchdown last week for Jacksonville. He'll have to deal with Mac Jones under center now. Already talked about Rome Odunze. He's the next highest ranked underperforming wide receiver play on our list. With Cleveland, Jerry Jeudy had the huge game last week, so that means he's no longer underperforming. But his teammate Elijah Moore is still on our list, so he's an opportunity as well as an underperforming wide receiver. We have MVS with the Saints at $4,600, going to be the number one receiver for the Saints for at least one more week here. He is also an underperforming wide receiver. And David Moore with Carolina, the next man on the list, and my favorite cheap play in this range. There's a few more underperforming wide receivers. We actually have a lot more this week than we've had in previous weeks, so you're going to want to check out the daily plug on OccupyFantasy.com for that full breakdown. You're going to want to check out the Occupy Fantasy model, which will be updated for top plays and projected ownership for any other players that are ruled out over the next 24 hours due to some of the injuries that we were monitoring on this slate. That's going to do it for me, guys. Good luck here in week 14 in the NFL, and I'll be back next week to talk to you about week 15.